The cold wind howled through the empty streets as Eleanor Hayes clutched her tattered coat tighter around her frail body. She walked with slow, measured steps, her weary eyes scanning the towering buildings that once felt like home. The city had changed, or perhaps she had. Either way, she no longer belonged. Her fingers trembled from hunger, her body weakened by days without proper food. Yet, it wasn't the hunger that gnawed at her soul. It was the humiliation, the weight of a past that refused to let her go. She stopped in front of the grand city library. The warm glow of the chandeliers inside cast an inviting light onto the sidewalk, contrasting sharply with the bitter cold outside. For a moment, she hesitated. Libraries had always been her sanctuary, a place where knowledge had no gatekeepers, where she was respected, not ridiculed. But would they let her in now, summoning whatever dignity remained within her? She pushed open the heavy doors and stepped inside. The warmth hit her instantly, making her realize just how numb she had been. The scent of old books, ink, and polished wood filled the air, a scent that once felt like home. She took a deep breath, savoring the familiarity, her tired eyes drifting across the rows of shelves lined with books she once taught from. But the illusion of belonging was shattered within seconds. A sharp voice cut through the quiet hum of the library. "Excuse me, ma'am," a young librarian, Macy Carter, called out, her voice laced with suspicion. "Do you have a library card?" Eleanor turned, meeting the girl's scrutinizing gaze. Macy's eyes flickered over her unkempt appearance. Her matted gray hair, the oversized coat barely holding itself together, the worn-out shoes with holes exposing her bruised feet. Macy's lips curled in disapproval. Eleanor straightened her spine. "I just wanted to sit for a while. I mean, no trouble." Macy's fake smile barely masked her distaste. "I'm sorry, but this isn't a shelter." Her voice was loud enough for others to hear, a deliberate move to make sure Eleanor felt out of place. People began whispering, their judgmental stares piercing through her already fragile sense of worth. I just wanted to read," Eleanor murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Macy scoffed. "Read?" She let out a short laugh, shaking her head. "Look, we can't have people like you hanging around here. It makes others uncomfortable." The words hit harder than any slap. Eleanor felt her throat tighten, but she refused to let tears fall. Not here, not in front of them. The humiliation burned through her veins as Macy motioned for security. "Please." Eleanor tried one last time, her voice cracking, but her plea was met with cold indifference. Two security guards appeared, their towering figures making it clear she had no choice. One of them placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "You need to leave, ma'am." And just like that, the sanctuary that once embraced her now pushed her out. Eleanor stumbled backward as the guards escorted her to the doors. The whispers turned into murmurs of relief. The grand doors slammed shut behind her, sealing her fate once again. She stood outside in the biting cold, her fingers curling into fists. The humiliation burned deeper than ever, but beneath it, something else stirred, an ember of defiance. They thought she was nothing. They thought she was invisible, but they had no idea who she really was. Eleanor stood frozen outside the grand library, her breath forming small clouds in the icy air. The humiliation clung to her skin like a stain she couldn't wash off. People walked past her without a second glance, as if she were nothing more than a shadow in the bustling city. But as she stared at the towering building, the very place where she once shaped young minds, anger simmered beneath the layers of pain. They had thrown her out like she was trash, but they had no idea who she was. Shivering, she turned away from the library, her frail body protesting with every step. The memories of her past life clawed at her mind, refusing to stay buried. She had been Professor Eleanor Hayes, a distinguished literature scholar, respected and admired. Students once hung on to her every word, inspired by her passion for knowledge. But in a cruel twist of fate, everything had crumbled. She had trusted the wrong people. Her world had been shattered overnight. A betrayal so deep that it left her with nothing, no job, no home, no dignity. Forced onto the streets, she had learned quickly that the world was merciless to the fallen. No one cared about her past accomplishments. The same people who once shook her hand now pretended she didn't exist. As she walked through the dimly lit streets, her eyes caught the reflection of herself in a shop window. The woman staring back was unrecognizable. Hollow eyes, sunken cheeks, and a face etched with suffering. She hated what she had become, A sudden gust of wind made her shudder, reminding her of the harsh reality she lived in. She needed shelter for the night, but more than that, she needed a plan. The world thought she was finished, but they had no idea she was just getting started. She clenched her fists, a new fire burning inside her. She would not stay invisible. She would not let them forget her. If they thought she was just a homeless woman begging for scraps, they were about to learn the truth in the most unforgiving way possible. The city never slept, but for Eleanor, the night stretched endlessly. She walked aimlessly, her worn-out shoes scraping against the pavement, her body aching from exhaustion. Streetlights cast long shadows, and the distant sound of laughter from restaurants and bars reminded her of a life that once belonged to her, a life stolen. She needed warmth. She needed a moment to think. Spotting an all-night diner across the street, she hesitated. The neon open sign flickered like a heartbeat, calling her in. With a deep breath, she pushed through the door, the bell jingling overhead. Heads turned. The contrast between the cozy interior and her ragged appearance was jarring. Waitresses in crisp uniforms moved between tables, the scent of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon filling the air. She could almost taste it. A young waitress, Emma, barely in her 20s, approached cautiously. "Can I help you?" Her voice wasn't cruel, but it wasn't welcoming either. Eleanor's voice was steady. "Just a cup of coffee?" Emma hesitated, eyes darting toward the manager behind the counter. He was already watching, disapproval clear on his face. "We have a policy," Emma mumbled, shifting uncomfortably. "You have to order food to stay." Eleanor's chest tightened. Everywhere the doors kept closing. She reached into her coat pocket, fingers brushing against the few crumpled bills she had left. Barely enough. "I'll take the cheapest thing on the menu," she said, holding out the money. Emma hesitated before nodding. "All right, 1 coffee and a small toast." Eleanor sighed in relief and slid into a corner booth. The seat was cracked, but to her, it felt like luxury. Minutes later, the coffee arrived. Hot, dark, and strong. She wrapped her hands around the cup, letting the warmth seep into her frozen fingers. As she took a sip, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Determination. They could strip her of everything, but they couldn't take her mind. And that was exactly what she was about to use to take back what was hers. The coffee was a temporary comfort, but Eleanor knew she couldn't sit there forever. She had spent months merely surviving, but now something had shifted inside her. She had spent too long as a ghost in her own life. It was time to take control. She watched the other customers, businessmen lost in their laptops, couples sharing quiet conversations, a group of college students flipping through textbooks. Students. That word used to mean something to her. It used to be her world. Her fingers tightened around the cup. Knowledge was still her weapon. She had to start somewhere, and she knew exactly where. Her old university. The thought sent a jolt of both excitement and fear through her. Would they even recognize her? Or would they turn her away like the library had? There was only one way to find out. Leaving a few crumpled bills on the table, she stood up, pulling her coat tightly around her. As she stepped outside, the cold wind slapped her face, but she barely felt it. With steady steps, she made her way across the city. Every street held a memory. Places she used to walk freely. Places where she once belonged. Now, people brushed past her without a second glance. After nearly an hour, she arrived at the university gates. The grand stone entrance loomed before her, untouched by time. Students streamed in and out, laughing, rushing to classes, carrying books she once assigned. She hesitated, her heart pounding. Then, squaring her shoulders, she stepped forward. But as soon as she reached the steps, a voice stopped her. "Excuse me, ma'am." She turned to see a security guard, his gaze wary. He took in her worn-out coat, her unkempt hair, her hollow cheeks. Judgment flickered in his eyes. "You can't be here," he said firmly. Eleanor's stomach twisted. She had been gone too long. To them, she was nobody. But she wasn't leaving, not yet. With a calm she didn't truly feel, she lifted her chin and said, "I was a professor here." The guard's expression didn't change. And now? Eleanor swallowed hard. And now? She wasn't sure of the answer. But soon, they all would be. The security guard's gaze didn't waver. His stance was firm, hands resting on his belt as if she was a threat. The unspoken question hung in the air. What was a woman like her doing here? Like her? Eleanor forced herself to stand tall, despite the ache in her body. "I was a professor here," she repeated, her voice even. The guard crossed his arms. "That was then. This is now." A sharp sting settled in her chest. She had spent years shaping young minds within these walls. But now, she was just another outsider. Forgotten. Rejected. A group of students brushed past them, barely sparing her a glance. She caught a glimpse of their books, the same subjects she used to teach. "I need to speak to someone from the faculty," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Professor Carter, he'll remember me." The guard exhaled loudly, debating whether to humor her or send her away. Then, reluctantly, he grabbed his radio. "Hold on!" Eleanor clenched her fists to stop them from shaking. This was it. If they turned her away now, she had no backup plan. Minutes passed, each second stretching unbearably. Then, finally, "She can come in," the radio crackled. The guard gave her a hard look before stepping aside. "Don't cause trouble." Eleanor didn't answer. She walked through the gates, each step carrying the weight of the past. The university looked exactly the same. Red bricked walls, ivy curling over windows, students hurrying to their next class. But it felt different. She was different. She reached the faculty building, her heart hammering. She hadn't seen Professor Carter in years. Would he welcome her? Or would he turn her away like the rest of the world? She knocked on the office door. A moment later, it creaked open. A tall man in his 60s stood there, his graying beard neatly trimmed. His sharp eyes landed on her, and for a second, she saw it. Recognition. Then, confusion. "Eleanor?" His voice was careful, uncertain. Her throat tightened. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times. Now, standing here, she could barely find the words. "Yes," she whispered. Silence stretched between them. Then, in a voice laced with disbelief, he asked, "What happened to you?" Eleanor stood frozen at the doorway, her breath shallow. The question echoed in her mind. What happened to you? How could she possibly explain? How could she sum up years of struggle, of losing everything, in a single sentence? Professor Carter studied her, his sharp, intelligent eyes scanning her worn-out coat, the shadows under her eyes, the way her fingers trembled slightly. The man who once treated her as an equal now looked at her like a puzzle he couldn't solve. "Come in," he finally said, stepping aside. She hesitated for a moment before walking in. The office smelled the same. Old books, coffee, the faint scent of polished wood. Shelves lined the walls, filled with works of literature and philosophy, some of which she had once taught, a lifetime ago. He gestured toward a chair, and she lowered herself onto it carefully, her body aching from weeks of sleeping on the streets. "You disappeared," Carter said, settling into his chair. His voice was softer now, laced with something she couldn't quite define. Concern? Pity? One day, you were one of the most brilliant professors here. The next, you were gone. Eleanor swallowed hard. Brilliant. That word felt foreign now. Once she had been confident, respected, someone who commanded attention in lecture halls. Now she was just trying to survive. She took a deep breath. Life happened. Carter frowned, waiting for her to elaborate. When she didn't, he leaned forward. "You were let go after the funding cuts, I remember. But no one ever heard from you again. No emails, no calls. Nothing." Eleanor clenched her hands together. The truth burned inside her, threatening to spill out. The betrayal, the loss, the moment her entire world had collapsed. "I lost everything," she admitted finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "My job, my home, my savings, everything." A heavy silence filled the room. Carter exhaled slowly. "Eleanor." His voice held something she hadn't heard in years, genuine sympathy. But before he could say anything else, the door suddenly swung open. A young professor stood there, eyebrows raised. "Oh," he said, looking between them. "I didn't realize you had a guest." Eleanor turned to Carter, waiting to see what he would say. Would he acknowledge her? Or pretend she didn't exist? This was the moment of truth. Eleanor held her breath as Professor Carter glanced at the young professor standing in the doorway. For a moment, there was an unsettling silence, the kind that determines whether someone will stand by you or turn away. Then Carter straightened in his chair and said, "Yes, I have a guest. This is Dr. Eleanor Hayes." Eleanor's chest tightened at the sound of her name spoken with respect. It had been so long since anyone had referred to her as Doctor. Hayes, the title she had once carried with pride, carried with the young professor, a man in his early 30s with neatly combed brown hair, looked confused. His eyes flickered between Carter and Eleanor, taking in her worn-out appearance. To him, she didn't look like a doctor of anything. I see," he stammered, clearly caught off guard. "I was just dropping off the latest research papers for review." He placed a stack of documents on the desk, still sneaking glances at Eleanor, as if trying to figure out why she was there. Carter nodded. "Thank you, Jacob. I'll get to them later." Jacob hesitated for a second before nodding and stepping back toward the door. But before he left, he gave Eleanor one last look, a look filled with curiosity, doubt, and maybe even a bit of judgment. As the door clicked shut behind him, Eleanor exhaled slowly. "He didn't recognize me," she murmured. Carter sighed, rubbing his temple. "Most of the younger faculty members wouldn't. It's been years, Eleanor. Years. It felt like a lifetime." Carter leaned forward. "Tell me the truth. How bad has it been?" Eleanor hesitated, then finally admitted, "Some nights I don't know where I'll sleep. Some days I don't know if I'll eat." The confession made her feel exposed, raw, but she had nothing left to hide. Carter's jaw tightened. "And no one, no former colleagues, no students, offered to help?" She shook her head. No one had reached out. No one had looked for her. Until now. Carter exhaled, his gaze filled with something she couldn't quite name. Then he said something that made her entire world shift. "You're not leaving here like this." Eleanor's heart pounded at Carter's words. "You're not leaving here like this." She studied his face, searching for signs of pity, but there were none. Instead, there was something else. Determination. "I don't need your sympathy," she said, her voice sharper than intended. Years of struggle had built walls around her, and she wasn't ready to let them crumble so easily. Carter didn't flinch. "This isn't sympathy. It's common sense." He leaned back, arms crossed. "You were one of the best minds this university ever had. I refuse to believe that a person like you should be sleeping on sidewalks." Eleanor swallowed hard. Hearing those words that acknowledged who she once was, felt foreign. Carter sighed and stood up. "Come with me." She hesitated. "Where?" "To the dean's office." His tone was matter-of-fact. "I want them to see you, to remember you, to understand the mistake they made." A sharp laugh escaped her lips. "You think they care? They threw me out without hesitation. To them, I'm just another name in a forgotten file." Carter held her gaze. "Then let's remind them who you are." The fire in his voice sent a shiver down her spine. For years, she had accepted her fate. But for the first time in a long time, someone was willing to fight for her. "Eleanor," he said, softer now. "At least let me try." She clenched her fists. Pride told her to refuse, but a deeper, more desperate part of her, the part that still remembered what it was like to belong, told her to say yes. After a long pause, she nodded. Carter gave a small, satisfied smile. "Good. Let's go." As he opened the door, Eleanor took a shaky breath. This was it, the moment that could change everything. And for the first time in years, hope flickered inside her. Eleanor stepped out of Carter's office, her pulse quickening. Walking these halls again felt surreal. Once, she had strolled through them with confidence, her presence commanding respect. Now she felt like a ghost, someone who had been erased and forgotten. Students passed by without a second glance, their laughter echoing down the corridor. Professors hurried along, too consumed in their own worlds to notice the woman walking beside Carter. No one recognized her. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered, her voice laced with doubt. Carter didn't slow his stride. "If we don't fight for you, who will?" They reached the administrative wing, the polished floors gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Eleanor's stomach twisted as Carter pushed open the heavy wooden doors of the dean's office. A receptionist, a young woman with sleek blonde hair and a crisp suit, looked up from her computer. Her eyes flicked to Eleanor, barely concealing her distaste. To her, Eleanor was just another nobody. "Professor Carter," the receptionist said with a forced smile. "How can I assist you?" Carter's voice was calm but firm. "We need to see Dean Holloway. It's urgent." The receptionist's gaze darted back to Eleanor. A silent judgment. A silent dismissal. "The dean is in a meeting," she replied, her tone polite but dismissive. Carter didn't back down. "Tell him it's about Dr. Eleanor Hayes." For a moment, the receptionist hesitated. Then, without a word, she picked up the phone and dialed. Eleanor stood motionless as the conversation unfolded. Her name had been spoken, and it was no longer forgotten. After a brief exchange, the receptionist hung up and forced another smile. "Dean Holloway will see you now." Carter turned to Eleanor. "Ready?" She exhaled slowly. No, she wasn't. But this was her moment. Straightening her shoulders, she nodded. It was time to reclaim what had been taken from her. As Carter pushed open the door to the dean's office, Eleanor stepped inside. Not as a homeless woman, but as the professor she once was. Dean Holloway barely looked up when Eleanor stepped into his office. He sat behind a massive oak desk, flipping through a stack of papers as if she wasn't even there. The same arrogance, the same indifference. She clenched her fists. Nothing had changed. Carter cleared his throat. "Dean Holloway, I believe you remember Dr. Eleanor Hayes." The dean finally glanced up, his expression unreadable. No shock, no recognition, just mild curiosity. "Dr. Hayes?" he said, leaning back in his chair. "That's a name I haven't heard in a long time." Eleanor forced herself to hold his gaze. "And yet, I never really left." A flicker of something, guilt, discomfort, crossed his face before it vanished. He gestured toward the chair across from him. "Please sit." She hesitated but took the seat. Carter remained standing, arms crossed, silent but firm, a silent shield beside her. The dean exhaled, folding his hands on the desk. "I assume this isn't a social visit." Eleanor straightened her spine. No more fear, no more silence. "I want to know why my career was destroyed without a second thought." Dean Holloway sighed, as if indulging an old grievance. "Dr. Hayes, you resigned." She let out a bitter laugh. "I was forced to. My reputation was tarnished. My research funding was pulled. I was blacklisted from every institution I applied to. Tell me, what choice did I have?" The dean looked unimpressed. "The circumstances surrounding your departure were complicated." Eleanor's jaw tightened. "You mean politically inconvenient?" Silence. Carter finally spoke. "She was one of the best professors this university had, and you let her rot on the streets." Dean Holloway met Carter's stare with a sigh. "Dr. Hayes, what exactly do you want?" Eleanor leaned forward. "I want my name back." A pause. Then the dean smirked. "And what makes you think that's possible?" Eleanor's heart pounded, but she didn't falter, because this time she wasn't asking, she was demanding, and she wasn't leaving without an answer. Eleanor kept her gaze locked on Dean Holloway, refusing to waver. The man in front of her had once held the power to dictate the course of her life. Not anymore. The dean leaned back, studying her as if weighing his options. "You expect me to erase years of damage because you walked into my office?" Carter scoffed. "You didn't hesitate to erase her career." The dean exhaled sharply. "You're asking for something that isn't easy. Academia is built on reputation, and yours is—" He paused, pretending to search for the right word. Eleanor finished for him. "Destroyed?" He didn't deny it. She leaned forward, voice steady. "I want my position reinstated. I want access to my research. And I want the university to issue a formal apology for what was done to me." Dean Holloway chuckled, shaking his head. "You've been gone a long time, Eleanor. You really think walking in here with demands will change anything?" Eleanor didn't blink. She had nothing left to lose. I think you don't want the truth about what happened to me coming out. A flicker of irritation passed through his eyes. She had struck a nerve. Carter folded his arms. It wouldn't look good, would it? A respected professor, pushed out under questionable circumstances, forced into homelessness, while the university thrived off her work. The dean's jaw tightened. There it was, the fear. Eleanor pressed on. I may have lost everything, but I'm still here, and I won't let you rewrite history. Silence. Then the dean sighed. And if I refuse? Eleanor's lips curled into a smirk. Then I take my story public. Let's see how long your donors stay loyal once they hear how you discarded one of your own. His fingers tapped against the desk, weighing the damage, calculating the risk. Finally, he spoke. I'll see what I can do. Eleanor didn't move. Not good enough. The dean's expression hardened, but he nodded. Fine. Give me time. Eleanor stood. You don't have much. She turned on her heel, Carter following. As they stepped out of the office, she finally exhaled. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was unstoppable. Eleanor stepped out of the dean's office, her pulse steady but her mind racing. It wasn't over. Not yet. Carter walked beside her, his expression unreadable. You think he'll actually fix this? She exhaled. Number men like him don't fix things. They cover them up. Carter smirked. Then what's your next move? Eleanor stopped in the middle of the hallway, turning to him. I need leverage. He raised an eyebrow. Leverage? She nodded. Something that forces his hand. The only thing these people fear more than a scandal is proof. Carter studied her, then slowly nodded. You're talking about the files. A chill ran down Eleanor's spine. They have to be somewhere. The records, the emails, there's no way they erased everything. Carter glanced around before lowering his voice. If those files exist, they're in the university archives. Restricted access. Eleanor's mind was already working. Who has access? Carter hesitated. Faculty, administrators, and... He sighed. Students working in the research department. Eleanor's eyes sharpened. Then we find a student willing to help. Carter let out a low whistle. You don't waste time, do you? Eleanor's lips twitched. Not anymore. She turned and started walking toward the library, her steps purposeful. If the truth was buried, she would dig it out herself. The library was nearly empty by the time they arrived. The quiet hum of computers, the faint scent of old books. It was painfully familiar. Carter scanned the room. Who do we trust? Eleanor's eyes landed on a young woman behind the front desk. Her hair tied in a messy bun, glasses slipping down her nose as she typed. She smiled. I think I have an idea. Carter followed her gaze. You sure? Eleanor nodded. I taught her once. She owes me. Carter smirked. Then let's see if she's ready to return the favor. Eleanor stepped forward, heart steady. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. Eleanor approached the library desk, her heartbeat steady but her mind sharp. The young woman, Sophie Clark, was absorbed in her screen, typing away, unaware of Eleanor's presence. Sophie, Eleanor said softly. Sophie looked up, eyes widening in shock. Professor Reed. She quickly removed her glasses, disbelief flashing across her face. I thought you left the university. Eleanor gave a small smile. Not exactly. Sophie's gaze flickered to Carter, then back to Eleanor. What are you doing here? Eleanor leaned slightly closer. I need your help. Sophie hesitated. With what? Eleanor lowered her voice. The university archives. I need access. Sophie's eyes darted around nervously. Professor, that's restricted. I know, Eleanor said, but I also know you're working on your thesis. You need faculty-level resources. I can help you with that. Sophie swallowed hard. This is serious, isn't it? Eleanor nodded. Very. Sophie's fingers tapped against the desk, her mind clearly racing. If I do this, I could get expelled. Carter finally spoke. Or you could help bring down a corrupt system. Sophie glanced between them, exhaling shakily. Then she nodded. Follow me. She led them down a quiet hallway toward the restricted archives. Eleanor's stomach tightened as they reached a locked door. Sophie swiped her access card, hesitating before pushing it open. 5 minutes, she whispered. That's all I can give you. Eleanor and Carter slipped inside. Rows of old university files stretched before them, shelves towering over the dimly lit room. Carter scanned the labels. Where do we even start? Eleanor's eyes moved quickly. Then she spotted it, a section labeled Dismissed Faculty Records. She moved toward it, fingers skimming the dusty folders until she found hers. Eleanor Reed. She pulled it out and flipped it open. Her breath caught. Inside were emails, reports, documents proving that the university had forced her out using fabricated misconduct claims. She tightened her grip. This was it. Carter peered over her shoulder. We got them. Eleanor exhaled, a dangerous glint in her eyes. Now, the real battle begins. Eleanor's hands trembled as she flipped through the damning documents. Each page was a weapon, proof that the university had orchestrated her downfall. Emails between board members, fabricated complaints, an official statement they never released. Carter scanned the files over her shoulder. They planned this for months. Eleanor's jaw clenched. And they thought I'd disappear. She wasn't leaving quietly. Sophie stood by the door, shifting nervously. Guys, we need to go. If someone finds us here... Eleanor snapped the folder shut. We're leaving. Carter tucked his phone back into his pocket. He had taken photos of everything. No one could destroy this evidence now. They slipped out of the archive room, hearts pounding. Just as Sophie locked the door behind them, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Eleanor stiffened. Security. Sophie whispered urgently, "This way." She led them toward a side exit, her fingers white-knuckled around her ID card. As she swiped it, the door clicked open. "Go!" she hissed. Eleanor and Carter darted outside into the crisp night air. The library loomed behind them, its windows glowing faintly in the darkness. They didn't stop until they reached Carter's car. He yanked the door open, and they slid inside. Eleanor's breath came fast. "We have what we need," Carter grinned. "Now what?" Eleanor's eyes burned with determination. "Now, we expose them." Carter started the engine. "I hope they're ready." Eleanor smirked, because she was just getting started. The car sped through the quiet streets, headlights cutting through the darkness. Eleanor clutched the folder against her chest, as if it were her lifeline. The weight of years of betrayal pressed down on her, but for the first time in a long while, she had power. Carter glanced at her. "Where to?" Eleanor exhaled sharply. "We need to go public." Carter smirked. "I know just the place." Minutes later, they pulled up outside a sleek, modern building, the Sentinel News Network, one of the most influential media outlets in the city. Eleanor hesitated. "Are you sure?" Carter killed the engine. "You want the world to know what they did? This is how you do it." Eleanor tightened her grip on the folder. She had spent years in the shadows, cast out, silenced. Not anymore. They stepped out of the car and walked toward the glass doors. Inside, The newsroom buzzed with energy. Reporters typing furiously, phone calls ringing, breaking news flashing across giant screens. A woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude spotted them. Jessica Monroe, one of the top investigative journalists in the country. She raised an eyebrow. "Can I help you?" Eleanor stepped forward. "I have a story, one that could take down the university." Jessica studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Come with me." They followed her into a private office. Jessica leaned back in her chair. "Start talking." Eleanor placed the folder on the table and opened it. "This is proof that the university fabricated accusations against me. They destroyed my career to protect their own corruption." Jessica flipped through the pages, her expression unreadable. Then she looked up. "If this is real, it's explosive." Carter leaned forward. "It's real, and we have more." He pulled out his phone and showed her the pictures of the documents. Jessica exhaled, tapping her fingers on the desk. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that meant war. "This story goes live tomorrow morning." Eleanor's heart pounded. Tomorrow the world would know the truth, and the university, they would never see it coming. Eleanor barely slept that night. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with possibilities. Would the university retaliate? Would they try to bury the story before it could spread? By sunrise, her phone was buzzing nonstop. Messages, missed calls, some from unknown numbers. She ignored them all. Today was the day everything changed. At exactly 8 a.m., the Sentinel dropped the bombshell. Exclusive. Renowned university accused of destroying professor's career. Leaked documents reveal corruption, lies, and cover-ups. Eleanor watched as the article spread like wildfire. Twitter exploded. Students, faculty, and even former employees chimed in. Some shared their own stories. Others demanded answers. Then came the university's official statement. "These accusations are baseless and misleading. We will be conducting an internal review." Eleanor scoffed. Internal review? That was code for sweep it under the rug. Carter sat beside her, scrolling through the flood of reactions. They're already losing control of the narrative. Before Eleanor could respond, her phone rang again. This time, it was a number she recognized. Dr. Malcolm Reed, a former colleague, one of the few who hadn't turned against her. She hesitated, then answered. "Dr. Reed?" His voice was hushed. "Eleanor, I need to see you. Urgently." Her stomach tightened. "What's going on?" A pause. Then, "There's something you don't know." Eleanor exchanged a look with Carter. This wasn't over. Not even close. Eleanor's pulse quickened. Dr. Reed's voice had a weight to it, a heaviness that sent a chill down her spine. "I'll text you an address," he said. "Meet me there in an hour." Before she could ask anything, the line went dead. Carter leaned forward. What did he say? Eleanor gripped the phone tightly. "He wants to meet. He says there's something I don't know." Carter didn't hesitate. "Then let's go." They drove through the city, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on them. The address led them to a quiet cafe tucked between high-rises. Dr. Reed was already there, seated in a back booth. His fingers tapped against a coffee cup, his expression tense. The moment he saw Eleanor, his face darkened. "You don't understand how deep this goes," he said the second she sat down. "The university didn't just destroy your career, they destroyed others too. And now they're scared, because if you keep pushing, you'll uncover something much worse." Eleanor frowned. "Worse than fabricating accusations?" Dr. Reed glanced around, then leaned in. His voice dropped to a whisper. They've been embezzling millions, covering it up with fake research grants, misreported donations. The people who came after you, they were protecting their money. Eleanor's blood ran cold. Carter exhaled. Jesus. Dr. Reed slid a flash drive across the table. I've been collecting evidence for years, but I never had the power to do anything with it. He looked Eleanor in the eye. But you do. Eleanor stared at the drive, her mind racing. This was bigger than her, bigger than revenge. This was about justice, and she was about to bring them all down. Eleanor's fingers hovered over the flash drive. It was small, unassuming, but it held the power to destroy an empire. Her mind raced. What if this wasn't enough? What if they came after Dr. Reed? After her? She met his gaze. Are you sure about this? Dr. Reed nodded. I've been sure for years. I was just too afraid to act. His jaw tightened. But if you take this public, be ready for war. Carter leaned in. We need to be smart. If they find out what we have before we expose them, they'll bury it. Eleanor's heart pounded. She had already lost so much. Her job, her reputation, her peace. But this was a chance to make everything right. She pocketed the drive. Then we don't give them the chance. Back at her apartment, Carter plugged the flash drive into his laptop. Lines of files appeared. Documents, emails, bank transfers linking university officials to secret offshore accounts. Eleanor covered her mouth. It was worse than she imagined. Carter whistled. This isn't just fraud. This is a multi-million-dollar crime ring. Eleanor exhaled sharply. We need to go to the press. Carter shook his head. Not yet. They'll deny everything unless we make it impossible for them to escape. His fingers flew across the keyboard. We leak some of it, just enough to make noise. Then, when they scramble to cover it up, we drop the rest. Eleanor nodded, her resolve hardening. She wasn't just taking back her life anymore. She was taking down an entire system of corruption. Carter turned the screen toward her. Are you ready? Eleanor inhaled deeply. Then, with steady hands, she clicked send. The truth was coming, and there was no stopping it now. Eleanor's pulse pounded as she watched the email disappear into cyberspace. There was no turning back now. Within minutes, the first leak would hit the internet. Carter's laptop screen refreshed. A few seconds later, his phone vibrated. Then Eleanor's. Then Dr. Reed's. The first news article was up. University caught in fraud scandal, whistleblower provides damning evidence. Eleanor's stomach tightened. It had begun. Carter smirked. That was fast. But before they could even process it, Eleanor's phone rang, an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Miss Quinn, a deep, controlled voice, cold, calculated, dangerous. Eleanor's breath caught. You've made a mistake. She gripped the phone tighter. Excuse me? The voice remained calm. You think you're exposing corruption, but you don't understand the people you're dealing with. A slight pause. Then a chilling whisper. Walk away while you still can. The line went dead. Eleanor's fingers trembled as she lowered the phone. Carter's brows furrowed. Who was it? She swallowed hard. Someone who doesn't want the truth to come out. Dr. Reed exhaled sharply. They're scared. That's good. Carter's jaw clenched. Or it means they're about to fight back. A knock at the door made Eleanor jump. 3 sharp, deliberate knocks. Not friendly. Not hesitant. The 3 exchanged glances. Carter stood first, moving silently to peek through the peephole. His expression darkened. 2 men in suits. Eleanor's stomach turned. They found her. Carter backed away. "We need to go, now!" Eleanor grabbed the flash drive. "Out the fire escape!" Dr. Reed hesitated. "What if they—" The door handle rattled. A second later, a heavy fist slammed against the wood. "We know you're in there," a voice barked. Carter cursed. "Move!" They bolted toward the window, and behind them, the front door burst open. Eleanor's breath came in short gasps as she hoisted herself onto the fire escape. Carter followed, yanking Dr. Reed up behind him. Below them, two men stepped into the apartment, their heavy boots echoing against the wooden floor. "Gone," one of them muttered. The other cursed under his breath. "Find them." Eleanor's heart pounded. They were running out of time. Carter motioned downward. Roof or alley? Roof. Eleanor's mind raced. The alley was risky. If the men had backup, they'd be trapped. The roof was their only option. "Up," she whispered. Carter climbed first, muscles straining as he pulled himself onto the rooftop. Eleanor followed, her hands slick with sweat. Dr. Reed struggled, his breath labored. Below, the men stepped onto the fire escape. They weren't far behind. Eleanor reached down, grabbing Dr. Reed's arm, pulling with everything she had. The sound of a gun cocking echoed through the alley. Her blood ran cold. "Don't move!" One of the men stood at the base of the fire escape, a gun aimed directly at them. Dr. Reed froze. Carter's eyes darkened. Eleanor's mind screamed for a way out. Then, sirens. Flashing red and blue lights reflected off the buildings. A voice crackled through a megaphone. "This is the police! Put your weapons down!" The man cursed, lowering his gun. The second man pulled him back inside. Eleanor exhaled shakily. Carter grabbed her wrist. Time to go. They disappeared over the rooftop, the city stretching beneath them. They weren't safe yet, but for now, they had a chance. Eleanor's lungs burned as she sprinted across the rooftop, Carter and Dr. Reed close behind. The flashing lights from the street below illuminated the edges of the building, casting long shadows over the city skyline. The police presence had bought them a few seconds, but their pursuers wouldn't give up so easily. Carter skidded to a stop near the edge of the rooftop, scanning for an escape. Below, a narrow alley stretched between two buildings, a metal dumpster breaking the long drop. It was a risk, but their only option. "We jump," Carter said, his voice firm. Eleanor's stomach tightened. "Are you insane?" Carter grabbed her hand. "Do you trust me?" She hesitated, then nodded. Without another second of doubt, Carter leaped. His body twisted mid-air, landing with a heavy thud on top of the dumpster. He rolled off, staggering slightly before looking up. "Go!" he called. Eleanor's breath hitched. There was no time to think. She ran, pushed off the ledge, and soared through the night air. Gravity yanked at her, her heart hammering as she braced for impact. The metal groaned beneath her weight as she landed, pain jolting up her legs. Carter caught her before she stumbled. Dr. Reed hesitated at the edge. Behind him, the fire escape rattled. The men were coming. "Jump!" Eleanor urged. Dr. Reed sucked in a breath and flung himself forward. He crashed onto the dumpster, nearly slipping off. Carter grabbed him, pulling him to safety, just as the first pursuer reached the rooftop. A gunshot rang out. The bullet missed by inches, sparking against the metal. "Move!" Carter barked, grabbing Eleanor's hand and dragging her into the shadows. They ran, their footsteps lost in the chaos of sirens and shouting behind them. They had escaped, for now. But Eleanor knew this was far from over. Eleanor's pulse was a war drum in her ears as she and Carter darted through the maze-like alleys, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. Dr. Reed lagged behind, his steps uneven, his hands trembling. "We can't keep running forever," Eleanor panted, her fingers tightening around Carter's. "Where do we go?" Carter's eyes darted around, scanning the darkened streets. The police sirens had faded, but their pursuers wouldn't give up that easily. "There's an abandoned subway tunnel 2 blocks from here," Carter said. "It's risky, but it'll get us underground. We can disappear." Eleanor nodded. "Let's move." Dr. Reed let out a groan, clutching his side. I can't keep up." Carter turned, gripping the older man's arm. "We're not leaving you behind." Eleanor's breath caught as she spotted movement at the end of the alley. A shadow shifted, then another. "They found us," she whispered. Carter's jaw clenched. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a small knife. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. The men stepped forward, their faces hidden in the dim light. One of them spoke, his voice smooth but laced with danger. "You're only making this harder for yourselves." Eleanor's fingers curled into fists. They were trapped. The leader took another step. "Hand over the professor, and maybe we let you walk away." Carter laughed, a low, dark sound. "Yeah? And I'm supposed to believe that?" The man smirked. "Number, but you don't have much of a choice." Eleanor's mind raced. They needed an opening, a distraction, anything. Then, without warning, a sudden roar filled the alley. A car screeched around the corner, its headlights blinding. The men flinched. Carter didn't hesitate. "Run!" They bolted, the car skidding to a stop beside them. The door flew open. "Get in!" Eleanor barely had time to think before Carter shoved Dr. Reed inside, then pulled her in after him. The tires screeched. They were moving before she even saw who was driving. She turned, heart hammering, and froze. The driver's face was the last one she ever expected to see. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. The driver's piercing green eyes met hers through the rearview mirror. "Asher?" she whispered, disbelief coloring her voice. Carter stiffened beside her, his expression darkening. "What the hell are you doing here?" Asher's grip on the wheel tightened, his jaw ticking. "Saving your ass, apparently." Dr. Reed groaned in pain, slumping against the seat. Eleanor placed a hand on his shoulder, worry tightening her chest. "We need to get him to a safe place," she said urgently. Asher nodded. "There's a safe house on the east side. No one knows about it." Carter scoffed. "And we're supposed to trust you now?" Eleanor glanced between them. The tension was thick, almost suffocating. "Asher, why are you helping us?" she asked, voice steady but cautious. A muscle feathered in Asher's jaw. He hesitated. Then he said the last thing she expected. "Because I know who's behind this." Eleanor's heart slammed against her ribs. "What?" Carter leaned forward. "Then start talking." Asher exhaled, his knuckles whitening on the wheel. "It's bigger than you think. The people after you, after Dr. Reed, aren't just some hired mercenaries. They're connected, powerful, and they don't just want Reed. They want what he knows." Eleanor's stomach churned. The professor's research, was it really that dangerous? Dr. Reed stirred, his voice weak. They can't get it. If they do..." He winced, gripping his side. Eleanor squeezed his hand. "We won't let them." Carter's eyes narrowed. "You still haven't answered the question, Asher. Why the sudden change of heart?" Asher hesitated again. Then, barely above a whisper, "Because I used to work for them." Silence. Eleanor's blood ran cold. The car felt smaller, suffocating. Carter tensed. "You're joking." Asher's expression was grim. "I wish I was." Eleanor swallowed hard. The man they had just trusted to save them had once been their enemy, and now he might be their only hope. The silence in the car was deafening. Eleanor's mind raced, trying to process what Asher had just admitted. He used to work for them. Carter's hands clenched into fists. "And we're just supposed to believe you're on our side now?" Asher kept his gaze on the road. "I don't care if you believe me, but the people coming after you, they won't stop. Not until they get what they want." Eleanor glanced at Dr. Reed, whose breathing was shallow. They didn't have time for this. Trusting Asher might be a risk, but right now, he was their best shot at getting out alive. "Tell us everything," she demanded. "Who are they? What do they want with Reed?" Asher exhaled. "They call themselves the Syndicate. They operate in the shadows. Government ties, corporate funding, unlimited resources. Reed's research threatens them." Dr. Reed groaned, his voice weak. "Because it exposes the truth." Eleanor's pulse quickened. "What truth?" The professor looked at her, pain and urgency in his eyes. "That they're controlling everything. The economy, the justice system, even elections. My research proves it. If it gets out..." He winced in pain. "It could bring them down." Carter muttered a curse under his breath. "So they want you dead before you can release it." Asher nodded. "And they'll kill anyone in their way." Eleanor's stomach twisted. She had known this was bigger than her, but hearing it laid out like this made the reality even heavier. They weren't just running for their lives. They were fighting against an invisible enemy that had its claws in everything. The car screeched to a stop. They had arrived at an abandoned warehouse on the east side. Asher killed the engine and turned to face them. "This place is off-grid. We'll be safe here, at least for now." Carter scoffed. "Forgive me if I don't feel reassured." Eleanor ignored the tension between them. They needed a plan. Dr. Reed was too weak to travel. The Syndicate was closing in. And now, their only ally was a man they couldn't fully trust. But one thing was clear. They had no choice but to keep moving forward. Eleanor stepped out of the car first, scanning their surroundings. The warehouse was massive, its rusted metal doors slightly ajar. The scent of oil and dust lingered in the air. It didn't feel safe, but it was their only option. Asher led the way, his posture tense, gun in hand. "Stay close." Carter helped Dr. Reed out of the car, careful not to worsen his injuries. The professor's breathing was shallow, his face pale. They didn't have much time before he'd need medical attention. Inside, the warehouse was cold and eerily silent. Stacks of abandoned crates lined the walls, and the dim light from a broken window cast long shadows. Eleanor shivered. It felt like a place where secrets were buried. Carter laid Dr. Reed on a makeshift cot. "He's getting worse." Eleanor knelt beside him, pressing a hand to his forehead. Too warm, too weak. Panic threatened to take over, but she pushed it down. They needed a plan. "We can't stay here for long," she said. "The Syndicate will track us." Asher's jaw tightened. "There's a contact who might help us. He has medical supplies and a safe house." Carter folded his arms. "And you trust this guy?" "No." Asher's eyes darkened. "But I trust that he hates the Syndicate more than I do." Eleanor exhaled sharply. Every option felt like a trap. But Dr. Reed's condition left them with no choice. Before she could respond, a faint noise echoed outside. Footsteps. Asher was already moving, gun raised. Eleanor's pulse pounded. Had the syndicate found them already? A shadow passed by the window, then another. Carter grabbed Eleanor's arm, pulling her behind cover. Dr. Reed groaned, his weak voice barely above a whisper. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then, bang! A gunshot shattered the air, the bullet slamming into the metal door. Eleanor's heart nearly stopped. Asher cursed. "They're here!" Carter grabbed a weapon from his bag. Eleanor's hands trembled, but she forced herself to stay steady. No more running. This time they would fight. The next gunshot rang out, hitting the crate beside Eleanor. She ducked, heart racing. They were outnumbered and trapped. The syndicate wasn't wasting time. They wanted blood. "Asher!" Carter shouted over the gunfire. "We need a way out!" Asher fired back, his movements sharp and precise. "Hold them off, I'll find one." Eleanor pressed herself against the wall, gripping the pistol Asher had given her earlier. She barely knew how to use it, but she refused to be a liability. Dr. Reed was barely conscious, his breathing ragged. They had to get him out alive. A syndicate soldier tried to slip in through the side entrance, but Carter was faster. His shot was clean, dropping the man instantly. One down, but how many more? Outside, tires screeched against pavement. Eleanor's stomach dropped. Reinforcements. "They're blocking the exits," she said, panic creeping into her voice. Asher's gaze flicked to her, calculating, cold. "Then we make a new one." Before she could ask what he meant, he grabbed a smoke grenade from his belt and yanked the pin. "Cover your eyes." He tossed it into the center of the warehouse, and within seconds, thick, blinding smoke filled the air. Coughing, Eleanor reached for Dr. Reed, pulling him close. Carter moved beside her, guiding them through the haze. Gunfire erupted again, but it was wild, unfocused. The smoke was working. "Back wall!" Asher's voice was barely audible over the chaos. "Go, now!" Eleanor followed blindly, feeling Carter's firm grip on her wrist. The smoke burned her lungs, but she pushed forward. Then crash. Asher had blown open a weak section of the warehouse wall, their escape route. Carter lifted Dr. Reed onto his back without hesitation. "We need to move!" Eleanor ran after them, her legs aching, her breath ragged. Asher was the last one through, covering their escape with rapid gunfire. They spilled out into an alley, the cold air like a slap to the face. A black SUV was waiting, its engine running. Asher smirked. "Told you I had a contact." The driver's door opened. A woman stepped out, her presence commanding. Eleanor froze. It was someone she never expected to see again. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. The woman standing before her was the last person she expected to see in this chaos. Lena Calloway. Cold, calculated, dangerous, and supposedly dead. "Asher," Eleanor whispered, her grip tightening on the pistol in her hand. "Tell me this is a hallucination." Asher exhaled, his expression unreadable. "Wish I could." Lena smirked, leaning casually against the SUV. "No reunion hug?" "I'm hurt." Carter stepped forward, still holding Dr. Reed. "We don't have time for this. If you're here to help, let's move. If not—" Lena raised a brow. "Relax, golden boy. I'm your getaway driver." She popped open the car door and gestured. "Unless you want to stay and play with the syndicate?" A sharp explosion rocked the warehouse behind them. The syndicate was relentless. They had seconds before more men swarmed the alley. "Get in," Asher ordered. Carter climbed in first, laying Dr. Reed across the seat. Eleanor hesitated for half a second before slipping in next to him. Asher slid into the front, his hand never leaving his gun, never leaving his gun. Lena floored the gas pedal before the doors had even shut. The SUV peeled out of the alley, tires screeching against the pavement. Gunfire erupted behind them, bullets ricocheting off the metal frame. "Bulletproof?" Eleanor asked, gripping the seat as they sped through the narrow streets. Lena grinned through the rearview mirror. "Do I look like an amateur?" Asher was still tense beside her. Why was Lena here? Why now? "You're supposed to be dead," he said finally. Lena only chuckled. "So are you, love. Yet here we are." Carter turned to Eleanor. "Who the hell is she?" "Trouble," Eleanor muttered. Lena smirked but didn't deny it. As the city lights blurred past them, one thing became painfully clear. This was far from over. The SUV swerved onto the highway, speeding past the city lights. Inside, the tension was suffocating. Eleanor could feel Asher's burning glare on Lena, but the woman seemed completely unfazed, drumming her fingers on the steering wheel. "You gonna keep staring? Or are you gonna thank me for saving your life?" Lena asked, a smirk tugging at her lips. "Why are you here?" Asher's voice was cold, calculated. "The last time I saw you, you were bleeding out in Paris." Lena let out a low chuckle. "Oh, sweetheart, you really thought I'd go down that easily?" She shook her head. "You should know me better than that." Carter shifted in his seat. "Someone explain to me why we're trusting the woman who faked her death?" Eleanor sighed, rubbing her temples. "Because for better or worse, she's our only way out of this mess." "Exactly," Lena said, flashing a grin. "And besides, I didn't fake my death for fun, darling. The syndicate wanted me gone. I had to disappear." Asher's jaw clenched. "And now you magically reappear just when we need an escape?" "I don't believe in coincidences, Lena." Lena glanced at him through the rearview mirror, her expression unreadable. "Believe what you want, Ash. But right now, I'm the only friend you've got." The SUV took a sharp turn onto a hidden dirt road, leading them away from the city. Eleanor's fingers gripped the seat as they bounced over the uneven terrain. "Where the hell are we going?" Carter asked. Lena smirked. "To an old friend's place, someone who can keep us hidden." Eleanor's stomach twisted. She had spent years running from the past. Now it felt like it was coming back to haunt her. She turned to Asher, whispering, "Can we trust her?" He didn't answer immediately, but the look in his eyes said everything. They didn't have a choice. The SUV came to a slow stop in front of an abandoned warehouse at the outskirts of the city. The metal structure was rusted, barely standing against the howling wind. As Lena killed the engine, an eerie silence settled around them. "This is the safe house?" Carter asked, skepticism dripping from his voice. "Looks like a place where people go missing." Lena smirked. "Exactly. That's why no one will think to look for us here." Eleanor exchanged a glance with Asher. His jaw was clenched, his fingers twitching like he was ready for a fight. Lena wasn't wrong. The place was the last spot anyone would search, but that didn't mean they were safe. "Move," Lena ordered, stepping out first. The others followed cautiously, their footsteps crunching against the gravel. Asher scanned the area, his senses sharp. "Who owns this place?" Lena walked ahead, pushing open the heavy metal door. "Someone who owes me a favor." Inside, the air smelled of dust and old memories. The warehouse was mostly empty, except for a few crates stacked in the corner and a dim bulb flickering above. Footsteps echoed from the shadows, and a man stepped forward. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and his piercing green eyes locked onto Lena with a mix of amusement and caution. "Didn't think I'd see you again?" Lena grinned. Miss me, Atlas? Asher stiffened beside her. Atlas? His voice held a dangerous edge. As in Atlas Kane. The name sent a chill down Eleanor's spine. Atlas Kane, the kind of man whose reputation was whispered, not spoken aloud. A power broker, a man who thrived in the underworld of secrets and deals. Atlas tilted his head. I see you've done your homework, Asher. His gaze flicked toward Eleanor. And you must be the reason for all this chaos. Eleanor's heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. If you know who I am, then you know why we're here. Atlas chuckled, stepping closer. Oh, sweetheart, I know exactly why you're here. He leaned in slightly, eyes gleaming with something unreadable. The question is, are you ready for what comes next? The air grew thick with tension, because the truth was, none of them were. Atlas Kane let the silence stretch, his gaze flickering between them, a predator sizing up its prey. The flickering bulb overhead cast long shadows across his sharp features, making him seem even more dangerous. Eleanor forced herself to stand her ground. If you know why we're here, then you know we don't have time for games. Atlas's lips curled into a slow smirk. Oh, but I do love a good game. He turned to Lena. I assume you brought them here because you trust me? Lena scoffed. I brought them here because I didn't have a choice. Atlas laughed, the sound rich but laced with something dark. Fair enough. He turned back to Eleanor. So tell me, sweetheart, what exactly do you need from me? Eleanor felt Asher shift beside her, his muscles tensing. He didn't trust Atlas, and neither did she. But right now, they had no other options. We need safe passage out of the city, she said, her voice firm. Somewhere they won't find us. Atlas studied her for a long moment before sighing. You know, people usually come to me when they want someone found, not when they want to disappear. He rubbed his jaw. This isn't going to be easy. The people hunting you? They've got resources, eyes everywhere. It's only a matter of time before they close in. Eleanor swallowed. Can you help us or not? Atlas's smirk returned. I can. But it's going to cost you. Lena stepped forward, crossing her arms. We're not here to play your games, Atlas. Just tell us what you want. Atlas glanced at her, amusement flickering in his eyes, then turned back to Eleanor. There's something I need done. A favor. His expression darkened. You help me. I help you. Asher's patience snapped. We don't have time for this. Atlas lifted a brow. Then I guess you don't have time to escape either. Eleanor's pulse pounded. She didn't trust him. But what choice did they have? Fine, she said, her voice steady. What's the favor? Atlas's smirk widened. Now we're talking. He leaned in, his next words a whisper, and just like that, the game had begun. Eleanor's breath hitched as Atlas whispered the favor into her ear. The weight of his words sent a cold shiver down her spine. Asher clenched his fists, his patience hanging by a thread. You can't be serious, she whispered. Atlas leaned back, his smirk unwavering. Oh, I'm very serious. You want freedom? You want to disappear? Then you do this for me. Lena shook her head. Eleanor, you can't trust him. Eleanor held up a hand, silencing her. Her mind raced. Every road led to a dead end. Every option was a risk. But there was no more running. No more hiding. She exhaled slowly, looking Atlas dead in the eye. I'll do it. A flicker of something. Surprise, admiration, crossed his face before he nodded. Then let's not waste time. Asher grabbed Eleanor's wrist, pulling her aside. His voice was low. Urgent. This is insane. We don't owe him anything. We can find another way. There is no other way, Asher, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. If we don't do this, we die. If we run, we die. At least this gives us a chance. His jaw tightened, his grip on her wrist firm. I don't want to lose you. She placed a hand on his chest. Then trust me. A long beat passed before Asher exhaled sharply and nodded. Atlas clapped his hands. Beautiful. Now let's get started, shall we? The night swallowed them whole as they stepped into the unknown. The game had changed, the stakes higher than ever. But Eleanor had already made her choice, and there was no turning back.